Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa. It's great to see you all here. I'm Pat Benedict, your worship associate today. Whether you've been a member here for years or you're visiting for the first time, we bid you welcome. We invite you to embark on a journey of spirit and growth. Your being here with an open heart and mind is what brings a sense of sacred to settle into each one of us. Welcome, everyone. Our speaker today is Fran Davin. Fran has been an active member of UUCT since 1996. A Unitarian since her teens, she served in a wide variety of roles in congregational life and also in local government, and always been a strong supporter of outreach into the larger community. And we're welcome Fran today. We're excited. It's time for our stone ritual before we begin our service. So I place a stone for the joys of the past week. A stone for the sorrows. And a stone for our intentions for the upcoming.
For our chalice lighting, some opening words from our hymnal. We come to this time and place to discover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the open heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and of hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all of her people one.
Live and breathe and beat the
Thank you. Our reading from meditation this morning is also from our hymnal. Maybe we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but we are connected all in mystery and miracle to the universe and to this community and to each other. And we will have our meditation music. Good morning. It is so good to be here in our place this morning. It's so great to see all of you and to hope that as the time goes by, we'll see more and more of our neighbors and friends here. Before we revisit the brave exploits of the Sharps, who left to us, their fellow Unitarians, such a great legacy, let me ask you all two questions. First of all, for how many of you is World War II memory a part of your own memory? Right. There's less and less of us that remember all that led to it and all that it was. Second question, are you familiar with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, with its purpose and with its history? About the same number. All right, so I'm not going to be telling all of you something you already know. I'm a longtime supporter of the UUSC because it provides us as Unitarians with a larger footprint in the bigger world than just that which we occupy here in our local congregational communities. And now to the Sharps. What a couple. Think of the United States at that time, the winter of 1939. A lot of you weren't even born yet. Culturally, domestically, the man was the head of the household. And the woman's place was in the home, creating a place of comfort. And her other job was, of course, to raise the children. And the mood of the United States in 1939 was heavily isolationist. That feeling was led by the prominent voices of people such as Charles Lindbergh, a hero of that time. And did you know that even Henry Ford made a trip to Germany in 1938 to talk with the Führer Hitler and see what he was managing to accomplish there? Also in 1939, anti-Jewish sentiment was on the rise. There was a famous Catholic priest at the time, Father Coughlin, and he had a weekly radio show where he spewed awful anti-Semitic vitriol weekly to the country. A poll was taken in 1939. And it indicated that 30% of the respondents agreed with Hitler's growing punitive actions against European Jews. I hope that wasn't a large poll, and I hope not a whole lot of people answered it, because 30% was a terrible, terrible number. So with that as a national backdrop, on a snowy evening in December 1939, the Sharps received a phone call from Everett Baker, who then was the vice president of the American Unitarian Association. Now, it would be 22 years before the Unitarians and the Universalists emerged, so I will be referring just to Unitarians in this talk. Ev Baker was calling to ask the Sharps if they could please come over to his home that night and discuss an urgent matter with him. Now, Waitstill Sharp was the young settled minister of the Unitarian Society of Wellesley Hills, Massachusetts, and Martha was his youngest wife, a helpmate, and the mother of their 2 young children. When they reached Mr. Baker's home, he told them of the deteriorating situation in Czechoslovakia and the strong desire of American and British Unitarian leaders to try to help their Czech brethren escape the growing Nazi persecution in Czechoslovakia. He also confessed to them that 17 ministers before them had already turned down the assignment. So Waitstill and Martha listened, heard him out, asked some pretty cogent questions, and then they agreed on the spot to take the assignment, which was to be a 4-month journey over to Czechoslovakia to help. The rest is our history. So let's let PBS producer Ken Burns set the stage for us. His fascination with the story of the Sharps gave him the inspiration to produce a PBS special about their heroic efforts to save Jewish men, women, and children from the Nazi programs of early World War II Europe. This was not anything they teach in divinity school, and that was so true. 2 American relatively young people being thrown into the mess of Czechoslovakia and Europe at that time, and they had to learn fast. While the AUA, which was the American Unitarian Association, was raising funds for their dangerous mission to come, the Sharps made arrangements for the care of their 2 young children and for how the Wellesley congregation would function for 4 months without their minister. And then, with funds awaiting them that had been wired to a Prague bank, the first step on their mission was London. There, they received training, interesting enough, with some Quakers who were also concerned about the growing mess in Europe, and British Unitarians. And the lessons taught were techniques and fine points of undercover work. That was something new for a minister and his wife. They learned memo writing techniques that couldn't be easily deciphered by enemy eyes. They were taught how to memorize key words instead of taking detailed notes when they met with would-be refugees. They were taught how to destroy any incriminating papers and how to ascertain if they were being followed by Gestapo or others, and then how to elude those followers if there were any. They were traveling under the guise of a minister and his wife on a mission, and so on they went to Prague to aid for the next 4 months in the mission of helping Czech Jews escape deadly Europe. So what was the situation that greeted them on their arrival in Prague? Hitler had already made his grab of the Sudetenland, which was an area of Czechoslovakia heavily populated by German ethnics. And so he used that as an excuse to annex that land from Czechoslovakia. None of the European powers tried to interfere to stop him, but nobody was prepared for what was to come from that beginning. There was a mass exodus into metropolitan Prague because of the tightening noose around Jewish artists, Jewish intellectuals, and factory owners. Suddenly, there was a tsunami of displaced persons, all seeking to escape to Western Europe or to North America. The situation was so dire that when the Czech government ran out of emergency housing for the refugees, giant sewer pipes were used for temporary housing of the refugees. There was great fear, great agitation after the takeover of Czech by Hitler and the Nazis. People there were terrified by the occupation, and those targeted by the Nazis were frantic to get out of the country. And the fear of parents for their children was palpable. There is a little segment in Ken Burns' epic about a young woman named Goethe, and she tells us a little about the evacuation of Jewish children there in Prague at that time. I think it's probably hard for us as Americans who have never undergone anything like this to imagine the anguish of these parents as they put their children on planes to fly to England and be safe. Most of those parents knew that they would never see their children again, and indeed, most of them did not. This was the forerunner of many, many similar evacuations that the shops were able to help, not only in planning, but in funding, because none of these evacuations come free. In fact, none of the many escapes would have been possible to accomplish without some access to funds. And that was made possible, first of all, by Americans who were sympathetic and British who were sympathetic, and they were given to the American Unitarian Association to distribute. But within Czechoslovakia itself, there was no way for the Jewish who were trying to escape to get their money out to sustain them once they got to freedom. So Waite Still Sharp, educated as a Unitarian minister, devised this ingenious system for funding the refugees that were able to escape. The Nazis wouldn't let refugees take any money or any of their assets with them. So how to transfer their money to a place of safety where it would await them claiming it was a real conundrum. Waite Still visited bank presidents in Geneva, in Paris, and in Lisbon, and using a letter that he had brought with him from the US Secretary of State at that time, Cordell Hull, he used that letter to impress the bank presidents and was able to open accounts in those banks. And he deposited funds that he had received from the AUA in those banks. But he also had this coded system where he took the funds of individual refugees, gave them a code number, and put them in an inventory. He would then give those individuals who had turned their personal money over to him a torn half of his business card. And on the back of that business card, he would write in pen the amount to which they were entitled if and when they made it to Lisbon or Geneva or Paris, and presented that half of the business card to the bank president. It was a brilliant scheme, and it worked. At first, the bank presidents were reluctant to get such a strange system into their bank, but that letter from Cordell Hull kind of impressed them, and they agreed to do it. Meanwhile, back in Prague, Martha was preparing to escort 50 Jewish refugees, and their papers were filled out to identify them as household workers. And they were to take the train to Netherlands and then board a small boat to England to escape. Some of the stories are so sad, and then some others make you proud as a fellow Unitarian and a human being. The Waitstills performed many more heroic acts before their 4 months was finished. They came back to the United States in the fall of that year, and the AUA immediately asked them to go back to Lisbon. By then, Eastern Europe was falling fast to the Nazis, and there was much more work to be done to try to get the rest of the persecuted Jews out of their countries. Then, when they returned from Lisbon, Martha again went back to France, where, amongst other things, she was able to get a trainload of milk from the United States to help children in France who were really suffering from malnutrition by that point. She worked for another 6 months there in France, and then got word from the underground that the Gestapo was going to arrest her in 2 days. So she made a very hasty exit from France to England and home. You all might like to know that the Sharps were posthumously honored by Israel in 2006 as the second and third Americans to be added to the very prestigious list, which is known as the Righteous Among Nations. This early work by the Sharps and some other dedicated members of the AUA and subsequent rescue operations was what led to the formation of our Unitarian Service Committee in the early 1940s. And our symbol, the chalice, the flaming chalice, was developed by artist Hans Deutsch to symbolize the eternal flame of light and hope, and to officially represent the Unitarian Service Committee. Which brings me to my closing remarks. In earlier times, our UU congregations were much more involved in the works of the UUSC. Many of you will recall each November when we received in our homes the little cardboard boxes from the UUSC, and we put them in the center of our kitchen table in our homes. They were labeled "Guest at Your Table." And each day we had our children put some coins in there at dinner time. The coins were to be sent to the UUSC at the end of the month to help the needy. And it was really good training for the children in what it meant to share with others. But it also helped to keep those needs in our adult minds as well. And the changing times, including the pandemic and other factors, have dimmed our focus on our Unitarian Service Committee. But all the worthy needs are still there. The UUSC of today still works to provide disaster relief and promote human rights and social justice around the world. They have 4 main program areas: rights in humanitarian crisis, economic justice, environmental justice, and civil liberties. Recent activities have focused on conflicts in Darfur, organizing volunteers to help survivors of the Gulf Coast hurricanes, workers' rights, and even the human right to water. So in addition to reminding us of the heroism of the shops, my message today is to remind us of the world around us and its needs, and to hopefully renew our partnership with the Unitarian Service Committee. For those of you who would like to view the entire story, I do have a 90-minute CD that was produced by Ken Burns of all the shop exploits in World War II. And I also have a 200-page book, which is the companion story in print. Or maybe we would like to schedule an adult RE program and review the humanitarian lessons together. They're as applicable today as they were 80 years ago. Thank you.
Please join in singing Blue Boat Home. I believe the lyrics will be on the monitors with you. Oh, below me I feel the ocean standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now. Never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all waking, dripping souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Thank you, Dee. And thank you, Fran. Whoops. It's time for our offering. And thank you, Fran. It's time for our offering today. And due to the circumstances, we still aren't passing the baskets yet. So We have a box in the back of the sanctuary by the door, and thanks to Carol Baker. It looks lovely. Thank you, Carol. You can drop any donations, contributions to the church that you like in the box on your way out, or you can always go to our website at uutampa.org and donate there. Or you can also send a check to the church. Linda's here 2 days a week and would gladly receive it. So we appreciate all your support and your contributions to help support this community and its work. Thank you.
Let us extinguish our chalice with some words from the great poet W.H. Auden. Unlike so many others in the world at that time, he saw what was coming. In the last verse of his poem, entitled September 1939, he writes the following compelling words. Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, but dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. And that concludes our service. We're so happy you were here this morning. Go in peace.